The cost of housing has dropped to its lowest level in 30 years. We've never seen a worse government than yours. People in Australia want to own their own homes. This is the end of the Australian dream. Australia is home to the fourth richest people in the world. They got that way by pushing people to buy homes when they are young and build wealth over time. But the real estate market there is on fire. It cost about $500,000 to buy a house in 2011 and almost $1 million to buy one in 2024. The pay also didn't keep up. Australia is a huge country, about the same size as the US without Alaska. But they only have 5 big towns. 40% of the people who live in Australia live in Sydney and Melbourne. They are 2 of the 10 most expensive towns in the world, where a house can cost more than 10 times the annual income. The other 2 are Adelaide. That's why more people want to rent. There are about 20 people waiting outside of every door you go to. A lot of people waiting in line for checks is not unusual, but it is pretty crazy. One reason rents are getting out of hand is because of this desire. The rent went up by 35% yesterday, getting even farther away from the Australian dream of owning a home. This is what Australia's housing problem looks like now. Life in Australia seems so much harder now than it did even 2 or 3 years ago. The property market is in trouble all over the Western world. Australia is very different from other places, though. It's crazy how much people want to rent homes. There was a 30-minute wait, and now you can decide for yourself if this place is worth it. Someone in Queensland was renting out single beds in shipping containers for $200 a week on Facebook Marketplace. Another owner let them use his porch. What does it mean that your sunny bedroom is separate from the rest of the unit? In Australia, things were different because they used to be the best at affordability, having a high percentage of people who owned their own homes and not having many poor areas. But things are changing. Australia had a good time in the 1950s. They had one of the best ways of life in the world, and their economy was growing. This is when the Great Australian Dream became well known. It became the ideal to have a detached house on a quarter-acre lot in the suburbs, a garden, and a Holden, which is the real Australian car. As prices dropped, more people bought cars, and more space was needed. This made towns in Australia spread out. Melbourne is now 6 times bigger than London, but there are fewer people living there. It's even worse in Sydney. It's 14 times bigger than Berlin, but only 2 million more people live there. With programs like the First-Time Homeowner Grant, the government encouraged people to buy their own homes. All of these things worked. From 1950 to 1968, the number of people who owned their own homes rose from 52% to 71%. It happened in more than one country. But Australia was the best. Everyone in Australia wants to own a home because they think it will make their life better and more successful. These ideas were supported by government rules that kept housing cheap and easy to get. And everything turned around. This is now a political matter. We did tell you at the time that Labor's housing plan was just a dream. Talk show hosts and politicians will give a lot of different reasons that help them reach their political goals. The heat is turned up in 2025 because it's election year. There is no question that it is all caused by a lot of immigration. But let's take a step back. What went wrong in the end? There was a big change in goals in the 1980s. People used to see housing as a basic human right, but now they invest in housing to make money. People were given tax breaks by the government to buy a second home and rent it out. This made more investors come into the market, which raised prices by boosting demand. A small group of wealthy Australians have become even wealthier thanks to negative property watching. It's not clear how much these measures changed housing, but a lot of people, especially on the left, don't like it. This is not good because it makes people want to take out loans to compete with people who are just buying a house to live in, which wildly changes the prices of homes. But this is a piece of a much bigger puzzle. Rates of interest have been cut to yet another all-time low. Another 0.25% rate cut is likely to happen in the next few months. The last 10 years have been very exciting. It was decided that interest rates would keep going down to help the economy grow and keep prices stable. The Reserve Bank cut the cash rate to almost nothing today, which is a record low in interest rates. Like many other places, they dropped to almost nothing during the plague. People found it easier to get a loan for a house when rates were so low. This increased demand, which caused prices to go up. On top of that, the government spent a lot of money on programs to help families with low and middle incomes buy their first home. Helped them. It helped a lot of people in Australia, but it also made more people want it. You get the idea. There were many reasons why there was more demand, which wouldn't be a problem if there was also more supply. But that was one of the bad things that happened. At its peak in 1978, the government built 20,000 public homes. By 2023, that number had dropped to just 3,000. These homes are for low-income people and provide an extra layer of security against being homeless. People wanted this kind of housing more, but the government invested a lot less in it. A growing amount of red tape was another thing that was slowing down building. We need all levels of government, local, state, and federal, to step aside and let the private sector meet the demand for housing. That would solve the housing problem, right? The private sector is severely limited by all of those rules, but there's more to it than that. Yes, Chris, getting land ready for building is without a doubt the biggest problem the business is facing right now. One problem for Australia is that most people want to live close to towns. You can find the best jobs, schools, and facilities here, but there is a lot of opposition in the area. People often speak out against plans to build a lot of apartments in a small area. Apartment buildings with 20 floors in your streets. They're showing us how we got to this point and why we can't keep things the same. Who on the streets has the money to pay $1 million for a flat in Brighton? They can't. The clear voice of reason says, most people want more housing, but not in our backyard. On top of that, there are problems with the supply system and not enough workers. We don't have enough workers or resources in key vital infrastructure. All of these things led to a lack of supply, which caused prices to rise. Australia has taken in a record number of people in the last 2 years, while all of this was going on. Almost all of their population growth comes from people moving there from other countries. During the pandemic, it slowed down a lot until it was only 25,000. After that, it hit a record high, with a peak in September 2023. Some people said this was careless because it happened at the same time as huge problems in the building industry. Building a house now costs 40% more than it did before the pandemic, and it takes 18% longer to finish because of a lack of materials. When supply was low, this made even more people want to buy, which drove up prices. Our house market is crazy in Australia, and they just let in 105,000 new people. Hey, could someone please let me know if these people are still alive? Australia needs more immigrants to fill job openings, but they are also adding to the problems that are already happening in the country. I really don't get why this Labour government has shut the door on a lot of new immigrants until we have enough homes for everyone in Australia. By 2024, it was a more and more serious issue. Australia's GDP per capita fell for 5 quarters in a row, which was the longest period of decline ever recorded. At the same time, record immigration was happening. At the same time, rent prices in Australia went up by a high amount. All of this is part of a long-term trend that worries me. Given that prices had gone up since 1971, these were the typical home prices in Australia's biggest towns. They had grown by more than 4 times by 2024. This is going on all over the world, but it's worse in Australia. In Australia, in 1987, a house cost 2.8 times the average income, which was the same as in other countries. This had grown to 6.9 times by 2019, which was faster than the US, Canada, and the UK. But in 2023, it rose to 9.7 times the yearly income, which was second only to Hong Kong in the world. The great Australian dream of getting a house and getting rich over time is becoming harder to reach. Right now, rent costs take up about 68% of the income of a full-time worker making the minimum wage. You can't save up for a down payment on a house because of this. More people will now always rent because of this, while homeowners are getting very rich. That this could lead to a 2-class society. Wealthy homes versus renters who aren't as lucky. Things go to the polls in 2025. Albanese, the Prime Minister, is focused on supply. He talked about a $32 billion plan to fix the housing problem in 2024. A plan to build 1.2 million new homes over the next 5 years is at the heart of it. But his enemies aren't sure about him. Rates of interest have already been raised by the RVA to almost the same level they were in 2011. This raises the cost of mortgages, which should make fewer people want to get them. As we all know, this problem is caused by the fact that not enough public housing is being built. Plus, there are these huge tax breaks. Tax cuts are once again being talked about.